Gentlemen, this is Miss Humbert here, and today we're going to be doing Unit 2 Notes 1, so our first notes of Unit 2. So in Unit 2, we're going to be working with systems of equations. So to start off with systems of equations, we're simply going to learn how to graph systems of equations. So let's go ahead and let's take a look. So what we want to do, just as kind of a warm-up, is just to graph two linear equations on the same plane. So that's pretty easy. We know how to graph lines at this point. So here, we're crossing the y-axis at a -5. So I'm crossing at a -5, so I'm going to go ahead and plot that point down at -5. And then I'm going up 1, 2, 3, and over 1. Now remember that if slope is just a number, that's the same as 3 over 1. So going up 1, 2, 3, and over 1, and I'm plotting that point. So now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to connect those 2 points. Hopefully you can draw straighter lines than I can, because that is pretty terrible. So then this next one we're crossing at 2. So I'm crossing the y-axis at 2. And then my slope is -1/2, which means I am going down 1 and right 2. And I'm crossing the then I'm going to draw a line between those 2 points. So what do we notice about these 2 lines? Well, I notice that there's 2 of them and that they only cross at 1 point. And that's the biggest thing you're going to learn, is that 2 systems of line will either cross at no points, at 1 point, or at infinitely many points. Well, infinitely many points, what does that mean and what does that look like? So let's go ahead and let's graph this other pair. So we're going to go ahead and we're crossing here the y-axis at -6, and then we're going up 1, 2, 3, and over 1. And we're going to go ahead and plot that point. Then I'm going to connect those 2 points. Then in order to graph this one, we have to solve for y. So I have 6x minus 2y is equal to 12. So the first thing I'm going to do is get that 6x over to the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 6x from both sides. So then I get -2y is equal to -6x plus 12. So then what I need to do next is to divide both sides by a -2. So when I do that, I get that y is equal to, well, -6 divided by -2 is 3, and then I have x. 12 divided by -2 is a -6. So let's go ahead and take a look. Well, if you look, I need to graph y is equal to 3x minus 6. What was the line I just drew? Y is equal to 3x minus 6. So what do I notice about the 2 lines? Well, I notice that they are in fact the same line. So now we're going to be doing quite a bit of writing, so feel free to pause the video at any point. So what is a system of linear equations? A system of linear equations is a set of 2 or more linear equations. So if you just want to write it is a set of 2 or more linear equations or 2 or more linear equations, whatever you need to do to remember it. And in that second box, the solution to a system is the point, the coordinate point, which we label as x, y, where the 2 lines cross. Okay? So it's the point where the 2 lines cross. Again, pause the video if you need to finish writing that down. Let's take a look at the 3 different types of solutions to a system of equations. The first one is that there's simply one solution. So in that big box, go ahead and just draw a sketch of this graph so you can kind of get a visual. And that's just if there's one solution, or the point of intersection. Okay? Taking a look at the second one here. Okay, that's if there is no solution, i.e. the lines are parallel. Okay, so if they're parallel lines, they're never going to cross each other, so that makes it have no solution. And the last option is if they're the same line, and so then we say that's infinitely many solutions. Well, that for me is a lot to write down, so I always abbreviate infinitely many solutions as IMS, because you know what, I don't like to write that much. I get hand cramps. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's take a look at our steps. Our first step when we're graphing lines is just to graph the first line. Well, that's pretty straightforward. If it's not in slope-intercept form, solve for y and then graph it. Next, graph the second line. Same thing. If it's not solved for y, solve for y so you can graph it. Thirdly, find the ordered pair where they intersect. If they are parallel lines, that means there's no solution. If they are the same lines, that means there's infinitely many solutions, or as I like to say, IMS. Okay? Again, pause the video if you need more time. let's take a look at that little box up there. So this is what you're going to put in that box up top, and that is that it is as simple as graphing each equation and figuring out where they cross. So all you're doing is trying to graph each equation and figuring out where they cross. Let's go ahead and let's try that with this first one. So here I see we're crossing the y-axis at 8. So I'm going to go ahead and graph that point 8. And then we're going down 1, right 1, and plotting that point. Down 1, right 1, and plotting that point. So then I'm going to have a line going down that way. Okay. Then I'm crossing the y-axis here at -7. So I'm crossing at -7, and then I'm going up 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going over 1 and plotting that point. Oops, I made it small. All right, and now we're going to go ahead and connect those lines. That did not go well, goodness. Okay. There, better-ish, okay? So now I'm going to look at the point at where they are crossing. So it looks here to me like I went over 6 and up 2. Now here's the thing about graphing to solve a system. It is extremely inaccurate because the real answer to the solution is 3, 5. Kind of close-ish, okay? So as long as you're, in the general region with your guess, that's the best we can do, okay? I'm not expecting you guys to be perfect because this is an inaccurate way to do it. But we're going to start this way. So let's go ahead and I'm going to have you guys, or let's graph this one together. So we're crossing the y-axis at 6. And then I'm going down 1 and right 2, connecting that line. For the second one, I'm crossing the y-axis at 1, and then I'm going down 1, right 2, graphing that line. So what I notice is that, this should be negative, is that they're both a -1/2. So whenever two lines have the same slope, that means they're going to be parallel, which means they're never going to cross each other. And since they're parallel, that means that I have no solution. So the answer to this one is no solution because the lines are never going to cross. Now let's take a look at this word problem here. It says Monica and Max Gordon each want to buy a new scooter. Monica has already saved $25 and is saving $5 per week. Well, I'm going to let X represent the weeks until she can buy the scooter. Max has 16. He's planning to save 8 per week. And then Y is going to represent their total amount of money. So I'm going to label that those axes. So let's start with Monica. So Monica already has $25. And for every X week that goes by, she's going to save $5. Now for Max, Max already has $16. And for every X week that goes by, he's going to save $8. So in order to fit, I'm going to have my y-axis go by 2 and my x-axis go by 1. Please make sure you're telling me if you change the scale. So for Monica, we're going up 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24. So that makes 25 right here. And then I'm going up 5. So I'm going over 1, 3, and then 5, and then I'm going over 1. Remember that my scale down here is 1. So now I can go ahead and I can connect that line. Kind of. Again, not the greatest at drawing on here. So we're going to do this other one for Max. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, and here is 16. And then I'm going up 8. So I'm going up 2, 4, 6, 8, and I'm going over 1. And I'm going to go ahead and graph that line. So to me, it looks like they're crossing right here. Okay, so that's about 2 weeks. And if I count all the way up there, I'll save you the time. It's at about 30. Okay, so how many weeks will it take them to save money? Remember that X represents weeks. So it will take them 2 weeks to have the same amount of money. And how much will each person have? Well, that's represented by the Y coordinate. So that's going to be $30. Okay. Let's take a look at these last ones here. So in order to graph these, we're going to have to solve them for y. So for the first one, I have 2x plus y is equal to -4. Well, to solve for y, I need to get my x over to the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 2x from both sides. And then I get that y is equal to a -2x minus 4. So that's my first graph that I'm going to draw. Now I'm going to start getting my second one. So I have 5x plus 3y is equal to a negative 6. Again, in order for me to graph this, I need to solve for y. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 5x from both sides, and then I get 3y is equal to a negative 5x minus 6. So then, once I've done that, I need to solve for y. Well, that 3 is being multiplied by the y, so I'm going to divide both sides by 3. And I need to make sure I divide both of those parts by 3. So negative 5/3, I'm going to leave as a fraction for my slope because that can't be simplified. Negative 6 divided by 3 is 2. So that's the other line I'm graphing. So let's graph that line first. Negative 5/3 x minus 2. So we're crossing the y-axis at negative 2. And then I'm going down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and over 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to go ahead and plot that point. And then from there, I am going to draw a line. Okay? Then for the second line, I got y is equal to negative 2x minus 4. So I'm crossing the y-axis at negative 4, and then I'm going down 2 and over 1. So I'm going to go ahead and draw that line. So it looks like they're crossing way over here. I ended up getting negative 3, 3 based off of my graph. You know what helps with these? A ruler or a straight edge or a side of a piece of paper. That will help you stay accurate. So the technical answer was way over here at negative 6, 8. Again, not the most accurate method, but it's where we're starting. Okay, so let's take a look at this last one. So the only thing we need to do for this one is to solve this for y, and then we're ready to graph. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is to add 4x to both sides. Okay. I'm going to give my computer a second to catch up. So then I get 2y is equal to 4x plus 2. Now, in order for me to get that y completely by itself, I'm going to have to divide both sides by 2. So then I end up getting that y is equal to, well, 4 divided by 2 is 2, and then x. And then 2 divided by 2 is 1. So I'm going to leave it to you guys to graph this equation and graph this equation and see where they cross, if they do cross. Hint, hint, best of luck. And show me your note sheet when you're done. Thanks for listening.